If this organizing campaign goes well, though, the UAW will significantly increase its influence in the South, as that's where the non-union automakers have set up shop. So 2024 is going to be the year that we kind of see how this organizing campaign really plays out.
We've got some thoughts on the year in review for Southern Labor. We are substituting our Last Week in Southern Labor segment for this, a year in review, and then we will catch back up next week with a 2-week roundup for Southern Labor. So first off, I wanted to bring you just some top line numbers that I thought were pretty neat. So every week, for Last Week in Southern Labor, we pull all of the NLRB filings from the last week. And so what we did this time is we pulled all the NLRB filings from 2023, the whole year for the South, and I did some. I broke out my coding hat that I learned. I learned a little bit of coding in college, not much, but a little bit, and I pulled some numbers for you. So in the South in 2023, the South we define as, the Southern United States and then the colonies. We had 547 petitions filed in 2023. There were 492 closed petitions, closed cases at the NLRB, including 2022 holdovers. So that was 416 closed cases from 2023 and 76 from 2022 that were closed in 23. For a total of 492. There were 219 election wins, with 179 being from 2023 filings and 40 from 2022 filings, for a total of 219. And now that might sound like a pretty low win percentage, but it is worth remembering that not all NLRB cases are, they're not all taken to a conclusion. So a lot of those 492 filings or 492 closed cases were withdrawn or otherwise closed without ultimately a win or a loss. So with those 219 union election wins in 2023 came 15,745 new union workers in the Southern United States and the American colonies. That, of course, does not take into account public sector workers, new public sector union members, or union members who were organized through a voluntary recognition process, of which, the voluntary recognition is not going to be as much as the NLRB elections, but it's still not insubstantial. And particularly, the missing piece of data is the public sector union members, because public sector union members make up a substantial portion of the labor movement. And so, not having those numbers is definitely detrimental to having the full picture. But, that's what we have. The state with the most union elections was Texas with 66. Alabama only had 10 union elections. The biggest NLRB wins were, in order, Duke University's win, 2,500 workers immediately going into a union workplace at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. That election was won by Workers United. Another win by Workers United happened at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, among graduate workers, obviously, with 1,722 new union members. Bluebird was a bright spot in the South with a manufacturing win by the United Steelworkers in Fort Valley, Georgia, 1,350 in that union election. The Teamsters won a large election at DHL in Erlanger, Kentucky, with 900 logistics workers being organized there. The National Nurses United organized 598 hospital workers at University Medical Center in Louisiana, and the SEIU organized 475 ramp workers at Jetstream Ground Services in Charlotte, North Carolina. So ramp workers like at airports is what that was. So those are some top line numbers there that I thought were pretty interesting. And then
and I'll just chime in real
Yeah.
quick on that part to say that I would argue that withdrawals are kind of a loss.
That's true.
I mean, obviously, it's not the same as an election loss, but ultimately, it's a loss for the movement, right? If workers got to the point where they filed a petition and for whatever reason it was withdrawn, obviously they didn't win their union, right? So that is notable, I think, and it'd be interesting to know, and maybe there are very smart researchers out here doing this. I don't know if there are, but it'd be interesting to know kind of the reasonings behind the withdrawals. Are there trends to the withdrawals, right? Because sometimes maybe it's they backed out, maybe there was retaliation, etc. So,
and there were some cases that we have covered where an NLRB election withdrawal, the reason for that was that voluntary recognition was granted, right? So
correct.
it's not always a loss,
right?
And
or sometimes they change to a different union that they want to represent them, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
It's complicated, but just wanted to make that note.
So then, taking a look at some of the bigger stories individually after, we broke down those top line numbers, I think the UAW obviously has to be the biggest labor story in the country, and therefore the South in 2023. And, it's really amazing as I was kind of thinking about what to say for the year in review. It is amazing thinking about how far the UAW came in 2023, because it's easy to forget, like, Sean Fain has not even been president for a year yet of the UAW. Right. He won the presidential election for the UAW back in what was it, June? Was it as late as June? It was sometime in 2023. And so that in and of itself was huge, right? A brand new slate of elected officials, the Members United slate, sponsored by Unite All Workers for Democracy, winning a clean sweep in every single seat that they challenged. I mean, that's huge. Ousting the administration caucus, from its impenetrable fortress atop the UAW. That in and of itself is huge. And then immediately turning around and making use of the apparatus of the UAW to wage an all-out struggle against the big three automakers in the United States, and coming back with record wins all in the same year. I mean, that's just really, really amazing. Some temporary workers in particular nearly doubling their wages on ratification immediately. And those same temporary workers will see 160% wage increase over the life of the contract. Really, really, okay, winning the election, huge story. Winning record contracts at the big three, huge story. But then they're still not done, because they round out the year with the most ambitious organizing campaign since the CIO's Operation Dixie in the 1940s. I mean, just... they're not stopping, they're not resting on their laurels, and that is hugely significant. And so while more of the big three operations are outside of the South, thinking about those record wins, there are still several facilities inside of the region, including Louisville's Ford truck plant, which produced 50% of Ford's profits from the year before. So if this organizing campaign goes well, though, the UAW will significantly increase its influence in the South, as that's where the non-union automakers have set up shop. And so, the 2024 is going to be the year that we kind of see how this organizing campaign really plays out. So far, only two plants have announced that they have reached 30% union authorization cards signed. The Fremont plant in Tesla has announced they have gone public with their organizing committee. They haven't hit 30% yet, I don't think, but I mean, just easily the biggest story and the most significant in labor in the country and in the South, the UAW, and hoping to see more from that in 2024. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. In any other year, though, the Teamsters at UPS would have been the biggest story, because that involved more than 300,000 workers nationwide. The Teamsters were able to extract significant gains without a strike because the strike was credible. So the minimum wage at UPS is now set at $21 an hour, which is going to be a particular boon for workers in the South, of which there are many at UPS, with a lower cost of living, where $21 an hour can go a long way. You know, $21 an hour in a place like rural Alabama goes a lot farther than it does in California, and you know, that was part of some of the controversy with the contract ratification. But the contract ratification went through overwhelmingly. Some 80% of Teamster members who voted in favor of the contract. So it was overwhelmingly supported, and some very big gains for the Teamsters at UPS.
And there is still energy, you know, even on kind of the more oppositional side. There's a lot of rank and file energy that want to keep pushing and get more from UPS. And I think that's promising to see that sort of energy within the Teamsters. And, you know, it's hard to keep people all on the same page, and you're not going to do that long term all the time. But yeah, there's like a groundswell of energy within the Teamsters as well. Yeah. So that's really promising.
They haven't, unfortunately, done anything as splashy as the UAW after their big conflict, but they have been quietly organizing DHL workers. I mean, it was the third largest union win in the South at DHL by the Teamsters. So, you know, they haven't exactly been sitting on their laurels either. They've been quietly organizing DHL workers. They've been loudly striking the first and only unionized Amazon delivery service provider, and they rounded out the year gearing up for a potential strike at Anheuser-Busch in their unionized facilities, with 5,000 Teamsters brewing America's beer. So, you know, like I said, not anything as splashy as the UAW, but they certainly haven't just been sitting around either at the Teamsters. Starbucks Workers United obviously continued to notch wins. Dozens and dozens of new stores in the South in 2023, escalating their strike actions. Still no movement on a contract, which is unfortunate, but that's got to be another big story of 2023. Grad workers are another one, and the grad workers and Starbucks Workers United, I think there's kind of a similar dynamic there that I think will be beneficial for the labor movement, not only like as such, you know, it is beneficial for the labor movement as such that grad workers are unionized at their universities, right? That is just good in and of itself. But what I think will be more beneficial, and we'll see the fruits of these seeds later on, is that all of these graduate workers are learning to be unionists in college, and they will take that with them wherever they go to work. Right. So all of these graduate workers, virtually none of them are going to stay on campus. The vast, vast majority of them are going to go work in industry somewhere. Are they going to be a union staffer? Are they going to go organize their office? Are they going to be inspired by the union movement and industrialize and go work at UPS or Amazon or a car factory or something like this, right? There are going to, and Starbucks, I think, is going to be a very similar dynamic, right? There's, because most people are not going to work at Starbucks for their entire life, but they're going to be able to take what they learned through the union campaign wherever they go, wherever they end up. So I think in 10 to 20 years, Lord willing, what we will see is that the most impactful thing from the trend of grad worker organization and organization at Starbucks is not going to be per se those organizations, but worker leaders being developed and going and doing bigger and better things in other workplaces and in other unions. The United Mine Workers ended its nearly 2-year-long strike against Warrior Met early in 2023, but the struggle is not over. Workers still don't have a contract. The company is stonewalling at the bargaining table, and Warrior Met is refusing to let 41 strike leaders back on the job. So that is coming back down to earth, that's a very sobering story. Getting some more lighter news, though. Newsrooms are continuing to organize, including right here in the South. Just recently, journalists in Mississippi began bargaining for their first contract after receiving voluntary recognition in the summer at Deep South News Today over in Mississippi. And some other outlets. I think there were multiple outlets in Mississippi that just unionized. So going to be seeing more of that. Child labor obviously dominated the headlines in 2023, both in that, it's happening, right? It's happening a lot, and it's happening more than it used to. But also in that Republicans in state houses across the country are seeing this increase in child labor, and they're thinking, wow, that's cool. I want more of that, and proposing laws to loosen regulations around child labor, including in the South. So very negative trends on both of those fronts, on the facts that we are seeing more and more illegal child labor, and that the Republican response to that is, let's just not make it illegal. Let's just legalize it, right? Very bad, very negative trends there. And then, rounding out the last big story that I had, and then Adam, I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to mention before we went to a break, but Israel and Palestine. Politically, that was definitely the biggest story for the last quarter of 2023. And labor has generally been very quiet on this front. But even that is a break from their incredibly incredibly vocally pro-Israel past. In the past decades, unions were very, very vocally supportive of Israel and whatever Israel wants to do to the Palestinians. And so that's changed. The stance generally among the labor movement has just been quiet. So that is a shift. But there are leaders and unions leading the way in calls for justice in the region, and some of the usual progressive unions you saw, like UE and the APWU. But the UAW rounded out the list of big names calling for a permanent ceasefire, and that's very significant. The issue continues to be a contentious one, but the direction is clear. The direction is clearly moving away from support of Israel because of Israel's actions. And Israel is continuing to erode what goodwill it has left. And so that's the clear trend as 2023 rounded out. And we're almost certainly going to see that progress in 2024.
So in terms of anything, I guess, to chime in with, obviously there were a lot of things happening outside the South with labor, with the big Hollywood strikes, for example, some of the healthcare strikes out in California as well. A couple of things I wanted to mention. According to the Cornell Labor Action Tracker, there were more strikers than the year before. In fact, the 500,000 U.S. workers who struck in 2023 doubled the strike number for 2022, which in turn nearly doubled the 2021 number. So we had more folks on strike, and something else worth pointing out was the popularity of people on strike and of unions in particular. So both unions and striking workers received record poll numbers this year in terms of public approval. So that is worth noting that, 3 out of 4 Americans are supporting people on strike, supporting unions. 9 out of 10 young people, right, people under 30, I believe it was 88% support labor, which is huge, which also speaks to what you talked about with, like, building young leaders and new activists coming into the movement. There's a lot of opportunity there. Let's see, in terms of other things to kind of lift up, I did want to lift up UE, not just for taking a stand on matters of peace and war, but they have had a lot of success, not in the South necessarily, but they've had a lot of success with that grad organizing that you talked about. They brought in over 20,000 new members.
Wow.
This year. And that's through 7 campus organizing campaigns across the West and up north. So really, that's very impressive for a union like UE that is not part of the AFL-CIO, does not have necessarily the resources of like a UAW. So very impressive. And yeah, I just, echo your comments there. I think, I guess my final reaction would be, it's clear there's a lot of energy, including in the South with the labor movement. There's a lot of reasons to be hopeful. But those numbers that you shared at the beginning are not like mind-blowing. You know what I mean? Like, our density still is far, far too low. And we have been losing as a working class and as a labor movement for decades. So we have quite a ways to go to catch up. But a lot of things look positive, and it's important that organizing in the workplace in the South continue in a big way.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.